What if I told you that everything you learned about the dawn of human civilization was wrong? We're taught a simple, logical story. First, humans learned to farm. Agriculture led to food surpluses, which allowed people to settle down in villages. These villages grew into towns, then cities. And only then, with the stability of settlement and the luxury of free time, did we develop complex religion, monumental architecture, and art. It makes perfect sense. Agriculture, then settlement, then culture. But what if that entire timeline is backwards? What if the most profound revolution in human history didn't start with a seed, but with an idea? What if, thousands of years before the first cities, before pottery, before writing, even before the widespread adoption of agriculture, primitive hunter-gatherers, armed with nothing more than stone tools, decided to build a cathedral? They did, and it's called Göbekli Tepe. It is 60 years older than Stonehenge. It is 70 years older than the Great Pyramid of Giza. This is not just another ancient ruin. It is a discovery that has ripped up our history books and forced us to ask the most fundamental questions about who we are and what drives us to create. This is the story of the world's first temple. Deep in southeastern Anatolia, in modern-day Turkey, lies a gentle, rounded hill. For centuries, local farmers called it Göbekli Tepe, which translates to Potbelly Hill. They would occasionally find unusual, large pieces of worked flint and carved limestone, but they largely dismissed them, thinking the hill was perhaps an old, abandoned Byzantine cemetery. For decades, archaeologists surveyed the region and saw the hill, but they too agreed with the local assessment. It was just a mound, interesting but not revolutionary. That all changed in 1994. A German archaeologist named Klaus Schmidt was re-examining old survey reports of the area. He had been working at a nearby Stone Age settlement and had a hunch. The reports mentioned the slabs of limestone, and Schmidt knew that Byzantine cemeteries don't look like that. He traveled to Potbelly Hill, and within minutes of walking its surface, he knew he was standing on something extraordinary. The worked flint was everywhere, more than any person could possibly use in a lifetime. And peeking out from the dust and rock were the tops of immense, T-shaped pillars. Schmidt realized instantly that this was no cemetery. This was the work of hunter-gatherers, and he knew he had found his life's work. What he didn't know yet was that he had found a site that would completely reshape our understanding of the ancient world. For the next 2 decades, until his death in 2014, Schmidt and his team painstakingly excavated Göbekli Tepe. And what they uncovered was, and still is, breathtaking. Göbekli Tepe is not a city. It's not a village. There are no signs of permanent domestic life. No cooking hearths, no houses, no middens filled with the typical refuse of a settlement. Instead, the site is composed of a series of massive circular enclosures. So far, about 4 main enclosures have been excavated. From what geophysical surveys suggest are at least 20 such structures still buried beneath the hill. The oldest of these enclosures, known as Enclosure D, is the most magnificent. It's a circle of stone about 20 meters, or 65 feet, across. Set into the thick, dry stone walls are a series of monolithic T-shaped pillars, each one carved from a single block of limestone. These pillars are huge, standing up to 18 feet tall and weighing as much as 10 to 20 tons. In the center of the circle stand 2 even larger T-shaped pillars, weighing up to 50 tons each. Let's pause to fully grasp the enormity of this. This was built roughly 600 years ago, during a period known as the pre-pottery Neolithic. These were people who did not have metal tools. They did not have the wheel. They did not have beasts of burden to help them. They quarried, carved, and moved these 50-ton stones using nothing more than flint chisels, stone hammers, and raw human power. The quarries themselves have been found about 1 kilometer away. You can still see a giant pillar there, partially carved from the bedrock but never detached, as if the workers simply dropped their tools one day and left. It's over 23 feet long and would have weighed close to 60 tons. How did they do it? The coordination and labor required are staggering. Hundreds, if not thousands, of people would have been needed. This wasn't a small family band. This was a massive, organized workforce. And this raises the first profound question. How do you organize, feed, and shelter a workforce of that size if you don't have agriculture? The animal bones found at the site are all from wild species: gazelle, boar, wild sheep, and aurochs, the enormous wild cattle of the era. It seems the builders were sustained by massive hunting expeditions. It's likely that Göbekli Tepe was a regional gathering place, a pilgrimage site, where different bands of hunter-gatherers would convene, feast, and work together on this colossal, shared project. But the true wonder of Göbekli Tepe lies not just in its scale, but in its art. The pillars are not blank slabs of stone. They are covered in intricate, stylized carvings of animals, rendered in high relief with a skill that is utterly astonishing for its age. These are not the animals they typically ate. We see a world teeming with potent symbols. Venomous snakes writhing down the sides of pillars, cunning foxes leaping, fierce boars charging, long-legged cranes and vultures, and powerful scorpions. The T-shaped pillars themselves are highly stylized human figures. You can see arms carved in low relief on their sides, with hands and fingers pointing towards their navels, sometimes wearing what appear to be loincloths. The T-shape represents the head in profile. These silent, headless giants stand watch in their stone circles, surrounded by a cavalcade of dangerous, wild creatures. What does it all mean? This is the central mystery. Klaus Schmidt was convinced he had found the world's first temple. A cathedral on a hill, as he called it. A place for ritual, for ceremony, for coming to terms with the cosmos. The animals, he theorized, might have been guardians or totems representing different clans, or perhaps figures from a forgotten mythology, a Stone Age pantheon we can no longer name. The two central pillars in each enclosure, larger than the rest, seem to represent a meeting or a duality, perhaps mythical twins, or a god and goddess. Another fascinating theory centers on astronomy. Some researchers believe the enclosures were aligned with the stars. The positions of the central pillars in some enclosures seem to correspond to the rising of specific stars, like Sirius. One of the most famous carvings, found on a pillar known as the Vulture Stone, has been interpreted as a detailed star map. This theory suggests that the carvings depict constellations and commemorate a cataclysmic event, possibly a comet impact around the year 950 BC, an event which some scientists believe triggered the Younger Dryas, a sudden and brief return to Ice Age conditions. If true, this means these hunter-gatherers were not just master builders, but also sophisticated naked-eye astronomers, recording complex information in stone for posterity. A more recent and grisly discovery adds another layer to the puzzle. Archaeologists have found fragments of human skulls at the site, but these aren't simple burials. The skulls show evidence of being defleshed, carved with deep grooves, and possibly displayed. This points towards a complex funerary cult, perhaps a form of ancestor worship where the skulls of important individuals were treated as sacred objects. Göbekli Tepe may have been a place not just to connect with the cosmos, but to commune with the dead. And this brings us back to the Great Revolution. The old model was that settled life, made possible by farming, gave people the time and resources to develop complex belief systems. Göbekli Tepe turns this on its head. The sheer effort required to build this place suggests the idea came first. The shared belief system, the religion, the cosmological worldview, whatever it was so powerful that it compelled disparate groups of hunter-gatherers to band together and accomplish an engineering feat that would be difficult even today. The theory, championed by Schmidt and gaining traction ever since, is that the need to build and maintain Göbekli Tepe is what drove the invention of agriculture. Think about it. Gathering enough wild food to sustain hundreds of workers for months on end would have been a monumental and ultimately unsustainable task. it would have rapidly depleted the wild game and plants in the region. The builders would have faced a choice: abandon their sacred project or find a more reliable way to produce food. The earliest evidence for domesticated strains of wheat is found just a few dozen miles from Göbekli Tepe, dating to just a few centuries after the site's construction began. It's a breathtaking proposition. We didn't invent religion because we had full bellies and free time. We may have invented farming because we needed to feed the gods, or at least feed the people building the houses for the gods. The temple came before the town. The spiritual revolution sparked the agricultural revolution. And then, after about 500 years of use, the most perplexing chapter in Göbekli Tepe's story unfolded. Around 80 BC, its creators did something unbelievable. They buried it. They deliberately and painstakingly filled in every single one of these magnificent circular enclosures with millions of cubic feet of dirt, stone, and animal bones. They entombed their own creation, preserving it perfectly under an artificial hill. Why? Why would a culture spend centuries building a sacred masterpiece only to bury it? We can only speculate. Perhaps the religion changed, and the old gods needed to be put to rest. Perhaps it was the ultimate act of preservation, protecting the sacred site from the outside world forever. Or perhaps they simply moved on. Astonishingly, new surveys in the region have revealed at least 11 other, similar hilltop sites, some possibly even older than Göbekli Tepe, in an area now called Taz Tepeler. Perhaps building these stone sanctuaries was a continuous process, and when one was finished, it was ritually buried and a new one was begun elsewhere. What we know for sure is that what has been excavated so far is just the tip of the iceberg. Less than 5% of Göbekli Tepe has been unearthed. Beneath Potbelly Hill lie perhaps 16 more enclosures, thousands more carvings, and countless clues that could further unravel the story of our deepest past. It is a library written in stone, and we have only just opened the first page. Göbekli Tepe is more than just an archaeological site. It is a profound statement about the human spirit. It shows us that long before we built cities and empires, our ancestors were grappling with the big questions. They stared at the night sky and saw more than just lights. They looked at the world around them and saw more than just food and danger. They possessed a complex, symbolic, and spiritual inner life. And they had an overwhelming urge not just to live, but to create something meaningful, something magnificent, something bigger than themselves. They built a place for the gods before they built proper homes for themselves, proving that perhaps the first and most powerful human drive is the search for meaning. So what is Göbekli Tepe? Is it a temple? An astronomical observatory? A monument to the dead? A meeting place for the clans of a lost world? The truth is, it was likely all of these things and more. It is a snapshot of humanity at a crossroads, on the very cusp of the world we live in today. It's a reminder that our history is far more complex, more mysterious, and more awe-inspiring than we ever imagined. The secrets still buried beneath that hill in Turkey may hold the ultimate key to understanding not just the dawn of civilization, but the very nature of humanity itself. What do you think was the true purpose of this incredible place? Let us know your theories in the comments below. Thanks for watching. If you found this journey into our ancient past as fascinating as we did, please hit the like button, subscribe for more deep dives into history and science, and ring that bell so you never miss an update. Until next time, keep asking questions.